Welcome to the Live Healthy Louisville podcast, where we dive into the heart of the city's health and wellness scene, brought to you by Results by Design Fitness. We're going to bring you local experts, stories, and tips so you can live your best life right here in Louisville.
That's right. And today looks a little different. Today we're taking a step back and learning from some of our commonly asked questions by some of our members. And we put out a post on Facebook and Instagram and other social media platforms just to see what the masses want to know. Like, what is the most commonly asked question when it comes to fitness and health and creating a healthy lifestyle? So we dug deep, we entered the trenches, and we got down with you. And we came up with the most 10 commonly asked questions by our members and the people of Louisville, and we're going to answer those today.
Yeah, I love it. And I like these styles because I love to answer questions. You know, it's what we do every single day working with clients, so it's really exciting. So let's get started.
I'm ready.
All right. Yep. So Ryan, over the last, 2 years now, you've been doing the majority of the assessments when people walk in our doors for the very first time at Results by Design. And you've gotten the opportunity to sit down and talk with a lot of different people from every age, gender, everything, right? And one of the things that I hear a lot, and one of the things that are common, is people come in, they're in their 50s, and they just want to know is it too late to start?
Yeah. I think it is a question. And, age is one thing that's brought up. And, obviously people bring up injuries and surgeries. And although, yes, I believe it's absolutely important to have someone in your corner that's going to assess you and that's going to take you through an in-depth screen, is going to get to know you exactly where you are. The short answer is no. Like, it's not too late to start at any age. Just thinking of some of our members, for example, a man in his 70s who was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer a couple of years ago and has had intense bouts with chemotherapy, and he's on medications. And, he probably had some contraindications with movement coming in to that journey. And that journey set him back even further. And even for that man, he shows up because, his why goes beyond an enhanced fitness and exercise routine. It goes into his daily life. Like someone who is afraid of falling and afraid that if he falls, no one's going to be around to help him, or he's not going to be able to get back up. That's the power of exercise. It's not just about how well you can exercise in your 50s and 60s and 70s. It's about how well can you live life in your 50s and 60s and 70s. And that's what exercise should be. So for that man, 75 years old, bouts with cancer, knee replacements, hip pain on occasion, low back pain on occasion, but he doesn't let that stop him from starting somewhere. Now, did we start him from basics and say, hey, let's get down on the floor. I'm going to make you do an exercise. Now stand up. I'm going to make you do an exercise. Now get back down on the floor. I'm going to make you do an exercise. But in the same breath, he's there, right? Doesn't matter where he's at in the journey. He shows up. It's not about how you fall. It's about how long you lay there. And I got to get him so strong and so stable that he's able to get off the ground. So it doesn't matter, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, our 13 to 18-year-olds that are in our sports performance program. Movement is medicine and motion is lotion. But I'll take that a step further. The right amount of movement is medicine. The right prescription of motion is lotion. Right. And so we must have a good game plan going forward. We must meet you where you are, and we must have a good roadmap to get you to your destination.
I think that hits the nail on the head. I think what you said is exactly right, is meeting people where they're at. We always tell people that they need to move well before they move often. Yep. And a lot of times when people think of exercise, it's like they think they're just going to get beat to death. And that's the last thing we want for people. We want people to feel better from a workout, not worse. And yeah, we get it. There's going to be some soreness in the beginning, right? That's just the reality. But you shouldn't feel like you got ran over by a Mack truck.
100%.
Right.
And starting off with the heavy hitters right away, right?
Yeah.
Which brings us to number 2. One of the most commonly asked questions we get, and I mean, my goodness, we get this on a regular basis, is how many days a week do I really need to work out in order to see results?
That's a great question. And I think the answer, real simply, is there's the difference between optimal and reality. Okay. So optimally, we probably see about 4 days a week, maybe 5 for some people as they get used to it. Typically 2 days of strength, 2 days of metabolic, and we'll tell you a little bit more about what that means here shortly. But sometimes the reality does not allow that. It makes me think of Kevin, right? Kevin was a member of ours for 13 years, moved to Florida, 2 years ago. And Kevin, over the course of those years, lost 80 pounds and more importantly, kept it off for over 10 years. You know how many days a week Kevin worked out? 2 days a week. And he worked out 2 days a week because that's what fit into his schedule and his life. I mean, the guy was a full-time employee, full-time worker. He was in the computer field working a lot of long hours. And he realized that 2 days a week, he could make a priority and stay consistent with it. And that's what we did. We figured out what kind of program can we put Kevin on? How can we meet him where he's at? How can we create a roadmap to get him to his goals, his destination? And that's what we did.
Right.
So Kevin was 2 days a week. So going back, if you've got 4 days a week, I think it's important and you can get those in. Let's do it consistently. If you can't, let's figure it out. And then let's use a hierarchy, right? So if we've got 1 to 3 hours a week, probably going to spend most of those doing strength training. Right. If you got a few more hours outside of that 3, then we can start looking at metabolic resistance training, quote unquote cardio, those types of things. But yeah, usually 4 days is probably optimal, but that doesn't mean it's always reality.
I just had this conversation with someone actually a few weeks ago where they said the best advice they had gotten since they started with us was, we always preach 2 strength and 2 metabolic. And, that will be the case. And like you said, 4 is optimal, but sometimes that's not reality. And she said the best advice she got was shooting between that 2 and 4 range because it did not create the chance of failure. Like if she shot for 2 to 4 workouts a week and she hit 4 one week that she had a wide open schedule, then great, we hit our goal. And then if she had a busy week the next week and she got 2 in, great, she hit her goal because we shot for that 2 to 4 workouts a week. Whereas if you set the goal for 5 right off the bat, and you're coming from a point to where you are a busy mom that's running around chasing teenagers and you work an afternoon job and you're trying to manage all of these things, but you can't manage your health, then it's going to be a wrecking ball, literally, if you try to get 5 days a week in right off the bat. So if you shoot for that 2 to 4, make it a consistent priority over time because it's a parameter that you can actually maintain. Then all of a sudden we create sustainability, just like Kevin did. So that's a great point.
You're exactly right, man. And so that brings us to the next question. So we talked a little bit about that. I said we need 2 days of strength, 2 days of metabolic, but what does that even mean? And why do we need both?
So we have to train. There's only 3 different ways you can train the muscle. Right? You can train it to get stronger, which we call our overall strength. You can train it for what we call metabolic, which some people may call it like a cardio type workout or getting their heart rate up, HIIT training, picked up over the last 10 years or so. And people talk about high intensity interval training. And then you hear the term hypertrophy. Well, what does all that mean? Well, we want to be well-rounded when it comes to fitness because in life, yes, movement is important, but it's how we carry out that movement in actual real life and reality that is even more important. So it's not just squatting for the same amount of reps at all periods of time. It's not just pressing a weight over our head for a certain amount of reps and a certain frequency and a certain intensity over time. It's how we carry those out. So we train for hypertrophy in order to help you understand how we still move efficiently when we are fatigued. You hear about people pushing to the point of failure or pushing maybe past failure in some of these programs. The reason being is because you're not always going to be fresh, ready, and warmed up to go in life. So at some point, we're going to have to push past that failure or push to that point of failure. For example, if we are working a 8 to 10 hour job, we get off from that job, we get a phone call, a friend asks us to move. We're already fatigued, especially if you work a manual labor job. If I'm training my muscles in order to go longer in the gym, don't you think we'll be able to go longer on a daily basis outside of the gym? Probably so. For metabolic resistance training or metabolic training, HIIT training, cardio training, members often talk about, being out of breath walking up and down stairs, or the family goes to Disney World and everybody else is walking around the park and they're the only ones getting out of breath. So I'm going to sit down on the bench. We want to avoid those things, right? So when we work in the gym, metabolic training, we're teaching ourselves how to be more metabolically or cardiovascularly sound so that we can replicate that in reality. And then strength training, everybody knows that, right? Picking up heavy stuff and putting it down. So when that person asks you to move, you can pick up that heavy dresser with them. We had a member, speaking of training for real life, that was at some sort of event. I can't remember the exact details, a sporting event or a school event. Can't remember the details, but she was in a crowd somewhere and someone fell and was having trouble getting up.
I remember this.
And another man came over to try to help him. And it sounds terrible, but the guy was kind of flailing, trying to get up and down off the ground. And the guy was probably causing more damage than he realized in trying to help. But one of our members came over, and she is one that deadlifts at the gym. And we're going to talk about deadlifting here later when we have some fun at the end. But she deadlifts at the gym. She squats heavy weights. She does all of our programming, trains her muscles in different ways. And she was able to help the guy off the ground. So a grown man can't help a grown man up, but a grown woman that trains in the right ways can. So that's why we train. That's why we say you need a mixture. That's why we shoot for 2 strength and 2 metabolic, because life isn't always going to be standing in place and lifting the same amount of weight. It has variables at play. Your body is meant to move well and move efficiently in a massive amount of ways throughout life. And so it's important that we train it for such.
I love it, dude. That was really good. And I think something important to tell everybody is that client, that grown woman, she was in her 60s, late 60s,
exactly,
right?
yeah.
So going over and picking up another human being, which is really cool because we see that a lot.
Well, and she's one too that sees others and then she's like, oh, I wish I could do that.
Yeah.
And that was kind of a wake up call for her to say, oh, what I am doing is actually preparing me for life. And I'm right there with those other ladies that are lifting maybe heavier weights at the moment. But I just picked up I don't know, what's the average guy, 200 pounds?
Probably so.
200-pound man off the ground.
Yeah.
So how can you help out your neighbor?
Yeah. And I think something else you said that was really important. You talked about training the different physiological effects or the different effects that we're trying to achieve. And you know me, I love to get into the geeky science stuff, so I'll try not to in this moment. But the different things you talked about, the hypertrophy, the strength, the metabolic resistance training, I think a lot of gyms, they fail to do that.
Oh, 100%.
Right?
Yeah.
I think everybody thinks you have to show up to the gym and get beat to death, be always out of breath, always be hot and sweaty to get an effect. And that's not the case. No. We know muscle's the only metabolically active tissue. And we know strength training is the best way to do that. So being fatigued and out of breath all the time isn't the best way to get there.
Right. The day and age of getting a lot of people in a room, hot and sweaty, sweat dripping from the walls, slinging around a bunch of weights, I think that we're going to actually get results and feel our best and be able to perform our best outside of the gym should be over. Now, are there some leading the cause that are going to get society to that point? I think so. But there's a lot of people behind the scenes that are holding people back from reaching their true realities and understanding truly what fitness can do, rather than putting people in this tiny box of what you should, quote unquote, fit into.
That's good. That's good.
Which, training in that form, training in that fashion, people have experienced injuries. I met with a woman last week that signed up to do training with us at Results. And one of her hot points was, hey, is this going to hurt me? Because I worked out at another gym and we did certain exercises, and I think that's where my back pain came from. So, Scott, I'm worried about getting injured. How do I make the workout safe for someone that's my age?
Move well before you move often, right? We tell people all the time that if you get into one of those really fast-paced, sweaty, out-of-breath situations and you move well, it might turn you into Tarzan, right? But if you don't move well, it's probably going to turn you into a patient. So assessing someone's movement quality is one of the first steps I think anybody you work with should do, right? Now, we use the FMS at Results by Design, and I love the FMS, which is the functional movement screen. It really breaks down movement into the basic foundational movements that we all do throughout motor development. Now, you don't have to use FMS. Your coach, your trainer, the gym you go to doesn't have to do that, but some form or fashion, they need to be doing a starting assessment. right? Because that helps them not necessarily to tell them what you should do, but more importantly, what you shouldn't do. Just because I think deadlift is the best exercise in the world for quote unquote fat loss doesn't mean that that particular person has the ability to actually get into position to adapt to that exercise. So I'm setting them up for failure. I'm setting them up to get injured. So I think step one is an assessment, right? Some form or fashion, you have to be assessed, right? Without assessing, you're guessing. We know that. Step two is creating a program, right? If we know somebody's goals, we have their destination, we have their starting point or their assessment, we know their starting point, we know which way to tell them to turn at the end of the street. You know, we always used to tell them in our assessments, and I love it. So you can get on I-65, bobbing and weaving through traffic, going 100 miles an hour, and from Louisville, Kentucky, going south, you're never going to get to Chicago. You're going the wrong way. And that's the reality of what a lot of people do in the gym. They work out really, really hard, right? They show up, they do these hard workouts, they get out of breath, they get super sore, but they never get a result. And it's because they were going the wrong direction, right? Chicago's north from here, so they're going the wrong way. So that's where a plan comes into play, a proper progressive plan to get them to their destination. And that's what we call the roadmap.
Yeah. I get it. It's hard to find, and how do you know who has the right program and whether it's going to be right for me? Well, I think you can tell right off the bat if someone truly cares. Are they taking time to understand where you're coming from? The contraindications you've experienced before. If people aren't asking you about your health history, fitness is your health.
Yeah.
If someone isn't asking you what you've experienced prior, where your common aches and pains are, and then showing you live in action how they can address them. Like with the functional movement screen, we had Dr. Allie Harper on for the relaunch episode, and she talked about managing pain. Well, there is a massive gap in between fitness and pain. The good thing about a functional movement screen, and there, like you said, there are other avenues, there are other modalities out there. The good thing about the FMS is a physical therapist and a strength coach created that. And the reason being is to bridge that gap in between pain-free movement, quality movement, and fitness. So that way people can reach their goals safely and effectively. So, and if you're going to do that, if you're going to start a fitness routine, you have to have someone that cares enough to look behind the scenes, to pop the hood and see what's going on there first before, like you said, they drive down I-65 at 100 miles an hour.
Yeah, I think that's the ticket, man. You gotta have a starting point, you gotta have a destination, and then you need a way to get there. And a lot of times, the way to get there with a lot of trainers and a lot of coaches is the way they like to get there, not necessarily the way you need to get there.
Yeah,
all right.
And the workouts of the days and the body part training. Well, what does that mean? What if that body part hurts? Am I still working it?
Yeah, exactly. All right, here's a good one. Now this one's going to open up a can of worms.
Oh gosh.
All right. So we hear it all the time. It's a question that's floated around the internet every single day. I don't know if everybody on this planet will agree with this, right? But how much protein do I actually need?
I was thinking about this one coming up, and it's funny. I was listening to a podcast that actually one of our members sent me, and it was Peter Attia's podcast, and he's a big longevity guy. And he had it was a panel, and one of the members of the panel was Dr. Gabrielle Lyon. And I know a lot of females, struggle with this concept in general. Yes. Like men love eating meat, men love consuming protein, and they'll do whatever. Like you shove a protein powder from the black market on the internet to them and they'll consume it. But I know females, sometimes they feel like they're going to get bulky if they can consume large amounts of calories in general. And yes, protein, you will increase your calories if you're increasing your protein. That's just the reality of the thermodynamic effect of food. However, Dr. Gabrielle Lyon on the podcast, she mentioned protein consumption, and she wanted to make it clear that protein consumption is non-sex specific. And at an absolute minimum, doesn't matter your circumstances, doesn't matter your contraindications, that she would consume for a regular adult at a minimum 100 grams of protein a day. And I think that's a powerful element because I think a lot of members in the very early stages, when I go over their nutrition with them, and when our coaches ask how their nutrition is going, are falling mightily short in that in that category. And it is a, like you said, it's a very, I don't know why it has to be, but it's a very controversial subject. And the reality is we have to look at the literature and what the literature shows. A lot of the literature that we have analyzed and you have analyzed over the last 15 years shows that there's a certain principle called a positive nitrogen balance.
Right.
And many of the research now is showing that the only way to get into that avenue, the main way is to consume the amount of protein equivalent or in a surplus of your lean body mass. And so first and foremost, we must see where your lean body mass is.
Right.
Right? It's easy to say just start eating protein. But if someone is going from I eat a ton of protein and we don't know exactly where they are, then we can't measure that. And what gets measured gets managed. So we have to see where you are currently. We use an M-body to measure body composition, and it shows your lean body mass. It shows your body fat percentage, and then we can kind of individualize nutrition from there. And with that, we analyze the lean body mass, and we're able to see exactly how many grams of protein would help you get to that positive nitrogen balance. And all that means, just to break it down for you, is that it puts your body in a level of, let's say, homeostasis or balance that allows you to boost your metabolism, to burn body fat, and engage muscle at the highest amount. An easy way to break that down is, let's just say a female in general says, hey, I definitely don't consume 100 grams of protein a day. You say I need to get into this mode to where I do want to lose body fat. That's me. Okay, I need to get into this balance here with protein. I'll try to consume 100 grams of protein a day. Okay, well, a palm-sized portion of protein at each meal would get you maybe, let's say, 25 grams of protein per meal. So let's say you had a palm-sized portion for breakfast, a palm-sized portion for lunch, a palm-sized portion for dinner. All of a sudden, we're at 75 grams of protein.
Right.
Most protein shakes are in between 20 grams and 30 grams of protein per serving. So let's just shoot at the low end and say that we're 20 grams of protein for a post-workout or a post-walk or a post-work or a snack protein shake.
Right.
We're at 95 grams right there.
Yeah.
So really, it's all about balance. Your body craves balance. It's not as simple as calories in, calories out. You can't reach your goals by just simply eating less, because reality shows you that, we already talked about being busy. Life's going to keep on going. So you're going to have to burn calories to keep on going. We're going to have to consume calories. If we supply your body with the right types of calories and we are consuming high amounts of protein, it's going to keep you full longer. And if you're satisfied for longer periods of time, you're less likely to make those choices, first of all, and you're more likely to put yourself into that balance.
I love it. And I think you're right. And protein is so much more than what most people think. Most people think, I'm going to eat protein, I'm going to get big, bulky muscles, right?
Yeah.
But the reality is the essential amino acids, the amino acids that protein is built of, is used in every aspect, every chemical reaction in our body. Okay. All of our cells use amino acids. They're so important for our immune system, for our neurotransmitters, for our metabolism, for everything. So I think it's important. So step one, right? Get to at least 100 grams.
Yeah.
Okay. Assuming no contraindications, right? That's what we're assuming here. All right. Step two, I would say get an in-body scan, right? So we know what your lean body mass is, and we can find out if you're maintaining that positive nitrogen balance that Coach Ryan is talking about here through whether or not you're maintaining your lean body mass as you lose weight or not, right? That's step two. And then step three, you gotta track it. Right, because we do hear that a lot. I eat a ton of protein.
I eat a ton of protein.
Right, a ton of protein. And a ton of protein can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So they might have had a ton of protein at one meal, which was like 30 grams, but then they didn't eat any the rest of the day. So they still only hit 30 grams of protein. So what gets measured gets managed. Track it, right? You got to. You got to track it.
And, I'm sure we'll touch on this a little bit more in this next segment because, people commonly ask these questions about nutrition because they just don't know. The fad diets of old have come and gone and have been disproven, and there is a better way. So one of our questions that we pulled, and I was like, we've got to answer this one. So someone has tried diets before, right? I've tried diets before and I failed. What makes your nutrition approach different?
Wow, that's a tough one. So I think the first thing that comes to mind is that the opposite of right is not left. It's wrong. So, excuse me, the opposite of right is not wrong. It's left. So don't judge, redirect. And a lot of times with nutrition, I think we're very quick to put people on what we consider the quote unquote perfect diet. The reality is we need to meet people where they're at, going back to like we were talking with training, and we've got to figure out, if you've got somebody over here that's eating and consuming fast food for every single meal of the day, and you try to take them all the way to this side and consume chicken and broccoli for every single meal, right? That's setting them up for failure. So we need to find out like, hey, what are your preferences? What do you like to eat? Some people are going to naturally feel better and kind of lend themselves to a lower carb approach. Some people are going to do better with more carbohydrates, right? So we have to kind of find out what that balance is. We typically start off with what we call our phase 1 nutrition, and that's our starting point for everybody. Okay. And usually what we do is we start off with protein and fat in the morning, protein and fat at lunch, and then a protein carb at dinner to bring down those stress hormones, get a good night's sleep, refuel for our next day workout. But that's just our starting point to kind of figure out what it is. Like I said, some people need more carbohydrates, right? Especially if you're active, okay? The more active you are, the more carbohydrates you're gonna need. If you're somebody that sits on the couch and doesn't move all day, you probably don't need a lot of carbohydrates, all right? If you give that person carbohydrates, it probably will kill them. Right. But if you take somebody that is super active, that's working out 5, 6, 7 days a week, and you don't give them carbohydrates, it will kill them. Right. So when I say that figuratively, literally, not literally, but it's going to destroy their metabolism. It's going to make them feel terrible. It's going to make them have low energy. It's going to drive their hunger, their cravings up through the roof. So we have to figure out how to balance that. We need to figure out like, what are some of their preferences, right? If you take away every food that they enjoy and tell them they have to eat this, do you think they're going to stick to it? Probably not. Yeah. So step 1, we start with our phase 1. We try to meet people where they're at, try to find out their preferences. But the one thing I do want to make sure I mention, the one thing that holds true no matter what we're doing is protein. Yeah. Right. So no matter if you're 100%. A high carb, no matter if you're a low carb, whichever one you prefer, protein has to stay consistent. Yeah. The literature shows that when it's consistent, there's really not much of a difference in fat loss. Now, I think that holds true in mostly metabolically healthy people. I think there's some instances that could be a little bit skewed or a little bit reversed. Yeah. But I think that's important to note is that. So get your protein in. Let's find your preferences, meet people where they're at, and try to go one step at a time.
Yeah. And what that does is that creates that sustainability. Like when you put the power in the individual's hands, like what foods do I enjoy eating? What foods are easiest for me to prepare? What foods can I take with me when I'm on the go that best fit what you just described? Because notice, like Scott didn't say eat chicken and broccoli every day for the rest of your life. Scott said protein and a fat for breakfast, protein and a fat, protein and a fat and a carbohydrate for dinner. Now, there are foods listed that are, we have selected in that nutrition program. Absolutely. Like great choices are still great choices. But in the same breath, if you can take that list of great choices and you can make it your own, all of a sudden, it's not a diet anymore. It's a lifestyle. And then if you are following this program and you're able to make the choices of the foods from that list that you enjoy eating whenever you do stray, and you're going to, because life isn't about sticking to something hardcore and sticking to a diet hardcore. It's about enjoyment, and it's about setting yourself up for enough success that when you do have chips and queso with friends on a Friday night at a Mexican restaurant, that you can get right back on Saturday morning. And that creates consistency and sustainability when you put that power into their hands. And that's what you've done.
Absolutely. One last thing, Ryan, before I forget, and one of the things I want to add is that I think what we eat is way more important than whether or not that food helps us lose fat or not. I think a lot of times when people think nutrition and they think diet, it's always about weight loss. But food is information. It's information for our cells. It's literally telling our bodies to inflame or not, to have energy or not. It's so important for our life and how we live and how we show up for our family and our friends that it's a foundational piece, dude. You know how passionate I am about it. And I love it. So I could go on for days, but let's
do a separate episode on just nutrition.
All right. So we're going on to the next one. And this is another one. I keep giving you all the controversial ones, right? So, so we know the best solution for pollution is dilution, right? And what I mean by that is we know drinking water is so important for us, but it's often one of those things, especially when you get into fitness and nutrition, you start off really well with it,
Right.
but you let it fall to its wayside, right? You forget about it. It just becomes so easy to do and so simple to do that you feel like it doesn't have that much effect. So what I'm getting at and what the question is, right? How much water should I drink?
I was thinking about this, and the ranges are so vast in the amount, the amounts that people tell you to get their body weight. Some say half your body weight. I think the important thing early on is to establish that water is important, and consuming enough water is important because water plays a role in every single metabolic function that we have.
Right.
It helps with energy and focus, with joint health, with brain function. I mean, try shooting a podcast if you're dehydrated, and then
Right.
and then trying to answer these questions. Water as a baseline is important in and of itself because of all the functions that it does control. So let's establish that, number one. Number two, there's a lot at play when it comes to hydration. Like, yes, at a cellular level, water is going to help you remain hydrated in order to carry out these functions. But there's some more at play, right? Nutrition matters, which we already talked about that a little bit. And with that, some minerals matter, right? We have some electrolytes at play. Hydration is a balance, we often say, of water intake and electrolyte consumption. And with that, you can drink water all day long and you're just going to pee out what you don't need if your cells aren't able to absorb it. And electrolytes help as a binder in order to help your cells become more hydrated. So when you hear people talk about sodium and magnesium and potassium and manganese, these are electrolytes that help your body with these functions. So as a baseline, yes, water is important, but you must consume a balance of electrolytes from either your food sources or what you season your food sources with, or we must supplement when necessary, which many people have found success with, myself being included, with taking electrolytes daily. As a rule of thumb, and we have this in our phase 1 fat loss nutrition journal because hydration is an important aspect of nutrition. We shoot for half your body weight in fluid ounces. Seems to be a goal that many of our members can hit. And then from there, we just assess, how your sleep is, how are your energy, how are you showing up for your workouts, the urine test. You can play the urine test here. If you're peeing dark yellow or brown, and we probably need some more, or we need to look at some electrolytes. So, if your urine is clear, then we're probably, a lot of the experts say that you're probably in the sweet spot there. So I think it's important to understand the principle behind it and why people do preach that, but then take it in as your own. Like, how are you feeling? Like, there's a big difference when, I think it's getting better, but for the longest time, it seemed like our kids that would come in for sports performance, they weren't allowed to carry around water bottles with them in schools. And I get it, right? Yeah. Like, some bad apples brought in alcohol, or some bad apples did some things with water bottles that were inappropriate. But man, you can't expect a kid to sit through 3 or 4 hours of class, asked to go to the restroom once a day, get a couple sips from the water fountain at most, and then return and to be amply hydrated. We just said you need half your body weight in fluid ounces. They're consuming 3 ounces maybe a couple times a day when they go to the restroom. And the difference in those kids that I know are hydrated when they come in for a workout, as opposed to the ones that are not, the difference is vast. So hydration is important, number one. Remember that. Half your body weight in fluid ounces is a good rule of thumb to start at, and then we analyze from there.
Yeah. 2 things I think you said that were really important. One, talking about the kids and some of the, the girls. We work with a lot of softball girls and stuff, and we've had that opportunity and privilege to do that. But I know one of the things that we see oftentimes is that they're going to these weekend activities and these weekend sporting events and softball tournaments and stuff, and don't consume.
Great point.
We've had one of them wind up in the hospital with dehydration. And it goes back to they can't consume any water. And I don't want to blame it all on that. That's not the case. But I think, from a performance standpoint, we know that a 1% dehydration level creates, it's either a 2 or 4% decrease in performance, right? So that's super important for athletes. And then number 2, you said water is important, but getting water into your cell is important-er. Is that a word?
Importantest, I think.
More important, right? So it's more important. And I think getting water into our cells is really what we're trying to achieve. That's what creates hydration. That's what creates cellular hydration. And it goes back to the in-body. It's one of the things I love about that because it looks at our extracellular water to total body water ratio. And we know there's a ratio there that when it's not balanced, something is happening there on a cellular level, whether that's swelling, edema, electrolyte imbalances, possible dehydration. We don't know yet, but it kind of gives us something to kind of look at. So I love the in-body for that. I think it's super important to stay hydrated, especially for athletes, but really for everyone.
Yeah. Correct me if I'm wrong, but on that in-body, that is the only section where it's recommended to go to the hospital if you're in certain levels of hydration. Everywhere else, yes, this is a lifestyle management technique with visceral fat level and body fat percentage and BMI, even let's get those to a healthy level. But if you show up as a certain score on your intracellular to extracellular total body water, then it's recommended to say, hey, I think you should go to urgent care.
Yeah, you're exactly right. No, that's what it says. So they're saying if you hit a certain ratio at that point that you're having some edema and you might want to get that checked out by a medical professional.
Yeah. So on to the next.
Okay.
This is something that at an emotional level can completely take someone away from experiencing life to the fullest. We see it when people experience moments in life that are heartbreaking. We see it when people experience a change of job or a change of scenery, or they move, or family changes. So all of these things in life, they are going to happen. It's just the reality.
Right.
We are meant to go through mountains and we're meant to go through valleys. So how do I stay consistent, Scott, when life gets busy?
Wow. That's a great question. I mean, it's something we deal with a lot, right? We work primarily with adults that have kids and have careers, and they have so many, they have aging parents, and they have so many things that you're juggling all at once. Oftentimes the last person they think about is themselves. But, it always reminds me of the things like, put your O2 mask on first. Right. So when you get on an airplane and they start talking to you about survival and if we go down and all these things, and you're sitting with a child or you're sitting with an older adult or whatever it may be, they always tell you to put your mask on first before you help that child or whoever you're traveling with. And they do that because they know if you don't take care of yourself, you can't show up and take care of anyone else. So that's number one, is getting away from that guilt of taking care of yourself. I think that's step one. Step two, success happens in community, right? Success happens in community. Failure happens in isolation. You've got to have community. You've got to have support. You've got to have, you need that at home, right? You need that in your gym community. You need that with your coaches. You need people in your life that when those things happen, and they're going to happen, right? They're going to happen, but you need somebody that's willing to come get in that hole with you, right? They're going to get in that hole with you and they're going to say, hey, I know how to get you out because I've been here before, right? So you need to find somebody that's been in that hole. You need to find somebody that's going to support you, but you also need to let go of the guilt and shame of like, hey, we always tell people when they walk in the gym, hey, this next hour is about you, right? It's not about the outside world. It's not about your to-do list. It's not about everything else that you need to do for everybody else. The next hour is about you. And that's so important to get across. And it's really with women and men at this point. I mean, we all do it. So I think the most important thing is make yourself a priority, and then two, get a community.
Yeah. Show yourself some grace, and then have someone around you that's going to show you some grace, and they're going to remind you what it feels like to give yourself grace when those moments do get busy. Because in reality, like if someone is in your corner, they're going to remind you of just an important element that you can still control what you can control. And if we figure out, okay, I'm busy right now, and even if you can't, I get situations may take you to where you can't even get into the gym at all. Well, can we go for a walk? Can we use this time to really focus in on some of those nutritional tactics that we talked about earlier? I think so. But in the same breath, it starts with those two things.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to show yourself grace, and you have to have someone in your corner that's going to help you find that when it's hard to.
And that's a really good point too. You said go for a walk or do your nutrition. Get into the gym is not the only way to take care of yourself, right? And I want you guys to know that out there. You know, we love the gym. We think it's super important. But the reality is there's things you can do at home, right? You can walk. You can make better nutritional choices. And all those things, all those little small hinges swing big doors and create lasting results. So definitely do that.
That was a good one.
Yeah. All right. So they keep getting better as we go down, you know, as we get through this list. So this one, I'm just going to give it to you. So I've fallen off the wagon, right? I'm rolling down the hill. I'm getting ran over by the wagon. It's happened every time I've ever tried anything. How do I get back on track, and how do I make it different this time?
This kind of ties into the last one with the grace component. I think at first you have to understand and you have to truly believe that failure is a part of the journey. Like fat loss, strength gain, I don't care what it is, gaining strength, losing body fat, accomplishing performance goals. None of that is linear. And I don't think it's meant to be, because if everything in life were a stepping stone, then it would be easy. And it wouldn't mold us into the person that we want to become.
No.
And it can't mold you into the person that you want to become with fitness, nutrition, and creating a lifestyle either, because, and I'll use an example, we were meant to experience resistance.
Yes.
Okay. So when we hit those points, understand that that's going to make us stronger. When we come out of those positions the next time, it's going to teach us what it's like to be there so that we're prepared for the next time, because they're going to keep coming. Having someone in your corner, having the ability to show yourself grace can help you out in those moments, but resistance is necessary. We went to a seminar earlier this year, and there was a presenter that brought up the Biosphere Project.
Yeah.
And the Biosphere Project is, I think it's in Arizona, Utah, one of those desert type states. And basically the whole thought process behind the Biosphere Project was create a big dome and grow vegetation, plants, create life inside of a area that's typically lifeless. And so they created it at the right temperature and gave the plants the right amount of water in order to grow. And they did not understand why the trees would grow to a certain height and then they would fall over. And this is a project that's been going on for decades. So they figured it out.
Yes.
Spoiler alert, they figured it out. They found that every tree was growing to really almost the same exact height and then falling over. And then over the course of studying these events, they found that there was no wind. Trees need wind. Our bodies are more like trees than they are machines. We need resistance. Same can be said with training. Like, we provide the resistance. We talked about the different elements of training. We're providing the wind for you in different environments. But I think we can take that piece for failure too, because things in life are going to happen. We're going to be pulled down. All that is the wind blowing. You just need someone to pick you up, help you get back on track, and remember what worked well before. Trust an expert. Find and trust the expert. Find someone who's going to support you in your lowest of moments. And then the third component there is to understand that it's a normal part of the journey. Failure is going to happen. And it often happens when you're alone. So get back to that community.
Yep.
And I think you'll get back on track.
Yeah. I think that you said something in the beginning there that's I want to talk a little bit about. And you said it's going to happen, right? You're never going to be perfect the whole time. And I remember an article that I wrote like very early in my career. It's probably like 2011. It's probably when Matt and I didn't have any clients and we were sitting back there and had a lot of stuff to do, right? And I wrote an article about calling a timeout. And I used timeout because I love basketball, most people in the state of Kentucky like basketball. So they kind of, it felt like a good analogy at the time for me.
Yeah.
But if you think about the game of basketball, typically the way a game goes is one team comes out, they go on a run, and they get up, and the other coach calls a timeout. So they regroup, re-aim, refocus, and then they come back out and they start, getting momentum in the game. They start coming back a little bit, so that other coach calls timeout. And that's the same thing with healthy eating and exercise and stuff like that. You might go 3 or 4 weeks, 6 months in a row, right? And then fall off. We see it all the time. But the way this becomes a lifestyle, the way this becomes something you can stick with for the rest of your life is how quickly can you call a timeout and regroup, re-aim, and refocus. So the first time you fall off, you worked out for 6 months. Well, you may fall off for 6 months before you call a timeout and say, hey, I've had enough. I'm getting back in there. But the next time, hopefully, you work out for 6 months and it's only a month before you call a timeout on yourself. And then it's a week before you call a timeout on yourself. And then it's 2 days, and then maybe it's just 1 meal. Right? So calling a timeout, being able to see those things, having guardrails in place are super important. And then the last thing I want to tell you, when you're talking about the biosphere, right? There was a movie created in the 90s called Biodome, and it had Pauly Shore in it. So for our listeners out there, this dude wasn't born yet, so he has no idea what I'm talking about.
93.
But yeah, we already knew this didn't work, right? So I don't know why they were trying it again, right? We knew it didn't work. The movie told us.
Yeah. I think a lot of those avenues just keep circling back.
Yeah.
You got to have someone there. Even the timeouts, the coach doesn't call a timeout and then go sit by themselves.
Nope.
they huddle.
Yeah.
And I think you got to huddle up.
Yeah.
And like Scott said, those they're going to happen more infrequent when you're prepared for them. And all that timeout does is it prepares you.
Yep.
And speaking of preparation, this is a doozy to finish off the list of 10 right here, Scott.
Yep.
So good luck, buddy. But they want to know what the number one thing they can do right now to make sure that they're strong and independent 10 years from today. So they're future pacing. I like this question. It's in depth.
That's a great question, and that could be a podcast, right?
Good.
Just in of itself. So I'm going to do my best to go through this. I want you to fill in the gaps because I know I'm going to miss a few things. But I think short, simple answer to this question, right? What is the number one thing I can do to make sure I'm strong and independent in 10 years? Strength training. Right? That's the simple answer. Now, we know strength training is a fountain of youth. You brought up Peter Attia earlier. We know from a longevity standpoint, there's a huge correlation between longevity and grip strength. Also VO2 max, but those are really more of a correlation than a causation, right? And I'll explain that maybe here in a little bit. But I think strength training is so important for making sure we have a good quality of life now. Okay, we don't get to determine how long we're going to live, but we do get some choice of how good we feel while we're here. Strength training makes everything easier. The stronger you are, and when I say strong, that's different for everybody, right? So understand that that's different for everybody. Just because I say strong doesn't mean you have to deadlift 200 pounds or 300 pounds or even 100 pounds. Maybe you do, but that type of thing. So it's about meeting people where they're at and letting them be the best they can be. Sure. Not trying to match what I do or what you do or what some of our super strong clients do, right? How can they be the best that they can be so that when they get down on the floor to play with their grandkids, they can get back up? When they have to carry the groceries in, they don't have to make 2 trips because nobody likes that, right?
You don't,
so
you can't.
no, you've got to figure it out. When their kid wants a piggyback ride or they want to be held because they're tired and you've been walking Disney for 6 hours. All of that comes back to strength training, and that's why it's so important. So yeah, it does help us look a little better, but more importantly, it helps us feel better and perform better in our daily activities. So that question, I mean, there's a lot of stuff to unpack in that question,
really
but I think
is.
strength training, if I just gave a super simple answer, strength training.
100%. And the data, you're gonna find all kinds of data that supports that. But I think you just take it down to basics. Okay, if you're stronger and you move a little better and you feel your best, you're more likely to go do things and experience things in life, which means you're moving more often, experiencing life more often. And when you're in more of a positive outlook because you're experiencing more things, then that's great for your emotional health as well. And then all of a sudden we're creating not necessarily longevity with number of years, but longevity with quality of life, which I think this person wants most.
Yeah.
And I think we all want that most.
Yes.
We can't always control contraindications as far as like predisposition and, God forbid, any diseases that we might come into contact with or that our body might force upon us. But we can control our health and our fitness when it comes to putting the right things into our body, training in the right ways. And that's what it's all about. How can we maximize your life so that you can go live it to the fullest, be around the people that you enjoy living with the most, and experience that for as long as you possibly can? And you hit the nail on the head. Like there's so many other ways we can go with this. And there's so many other things that we can, like you said, unpack. But I think keep it simple. Like start with something that allows you to feel your best.
True.
And from what we've seen, strength training helps our people feel their best 10 years longer.
Yeah. Man, these are some good questions. And we really appreciate the listeners out there giving us these questions, our members at the gym giving us these questions. And if you like this style, send your questions in. We would love to do another episode like this on the air, answer your questions. It's fun, right?
It was.
But real quick, before we end.
Yeah.
So I've got a few more questions for you.
Okay.
All right. Just kind of rapid fire. I've got a few for you. And these are just for fun.
Yeah.
All right. So you ready for these?
I'm ready.
All right. Coffee or pre-workout?
Coffee, 100%. Now, okay, never mind. Coffee, let's move on.
All right. Squats or deadlifts?
Man, I love both of these moves. I think the important thing is that you choose the one that feels the best for you. The coach is going to do that for you. I love deadlifts because it's total body though. You're going to get some grip strength. You're going to get some core activation. You're going to use the most important muscle for your body, in my opinion, which is your rear end, because we sit on it all day long. The point is find a coach.
Right. I love it. Burpees. Love them or hate them?
Man, I love burpees. I think people do them the wrong way. Right? I don't think you need to put your shoulder in a compromised position by bouncing your chest off the floor. Let's get into a tall plank position first. I like burpees. They're fun.
Yeah. Favorite cheat meal?
Favorite cheat meal? Man, I am more of a savory person than a sweet person. So I'm your pizza guy. I'm your wings. I'm your guy that's going to consume. Now, I got to make sure there's a lot of protein on those, but I'm going to consume those.
I love it. And last one. What's one supplement you would never give up?
One supplement I will never give up. We talked about this in the very beginning. We talked about protein. I am someone who makes it this is something I will never give up, is making my protein a priority, like we talked about earlier. I make sure that my body stays in that positive nitrogen balance. I almost gamify it. If I check in on the in-body and my muscle is down, no, we're gonna increase that protein. So I would say my protein products, my amino acids, and my protein powders.
Good. I love it, man. This has been fun. Hopefully we will have a lot of other questions come in. We get to do this again. But we love trying to cut through some of the noise. We love trying to give simple, proven steps that we've used with thousands of people right here in Louisville to live healthier and stronger.
Yeah. If you loved it and you would like to come and experience what we have to offer at Results by Design Fitness, I'm more than happy to answer your questions in person.
Yes.
I'm more than happy to unpack your story in person and hear everything that you desire when it comes to living fully, like we talked about. So if you would love to book a starting point session with me, then let's make that happen. Let's get a link attached here and click that link and book with me, and we can go over your goals. Go over what's most important in your journey, and I can meet you where you are when it comes to selecting exercises that will get you to your goals safely, effectively, and live more fully. If you have any questions, please reach out to us. You can reach us. I'm Ryan at resultsbydesignfitness.com. We're on social media, Instagram at Results by Design Fitness. At Live Healthy Louisville is the Instagram for this podcast. You can reach Scott at
Results by Design Fitness, Instagram, Coach Scott Wilson. Make sure you subscribe, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
click the little bell, right? Click the button and subscribe, and maybe you share, right? Maybe you have a friend that needs a little extra encouragement, and that's what we're here for. So I think until next time, so get out there and live healthy, Louisville.
Live Healthy Louisville. Love you too.